This is your host, Danny, and this is Common Mistakes from English Plus Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about common mistakes we make using the word prefer. So I will start with the very first example, and we will take it from there and talk about the common mistakes we make with the word prefer. I'd prefer to staying at a different hotel this time. What's wrong with that? I'd prefer to staying at a different hotel. I'm talking about my preference. Can I say that? No, you can't. You can't say I'd prefer to staying. You prefer to do something, not to doing. For example, they prefer to wait and see what happens. So here, coming back to this example, I'd prefer to stay at a different hotel this time, not to staying. Let me give you another example. I'd prefer renting a small flat rather than live with a host family. What about this one? Well, maybe if we don't put to, we can put ing, right? We can say I'd prefer renting, not to renting. Yeah, we've established that fact that we can't say I'd prefer to doing. That's okay. But what about doing without to? Can we say that? No, not really. When you are talking about a future or imaginary event, you use would rather to do something, not doing. We don't use doing, not with to or without to. For example, I think I'd prefer to wait a bit longer, just in case the others show up. But when you're not talking about a future or imaginary event, you can use that. For example, you say, I've always preferred eating at home to eating in restaurants. You can use ing if you want, but not when you want to talk about future or imaginary events. So coming back here, I'd prefer renting a small flat rather than live with a host family. You're talking about a future event, maybe imaginary, maybe not, but a future one. So here, you would want to say, I'd prefer to rent a small flat rather than live with a host family. And now 2 more examples. Why do you prefer the theater than the cinema? Or, I prefer drawing than painting. What's wrong with that? We use then to say that something better than something else, like that, right? Well, not really. You prefer something to something else. Or you prefer doing something to doing something else, not then. For example, he normally prefers classical music to rock. Or most women prefer breastfeeding to bottle feeding. You can say that, but not then. Now, if you use rather instead of prefer, you can do that. If you say I'd rather, not I'd prefer. If you say I'd rather live in the north than in the south, that's fine. Or most women would rather go out to work than stay at home all day. So with the expression I'd rather, yes, of course, you can use then, but not with prefer. With prefer, you use to, not then. So coming back to these 2 examples, why do you prefer the theater than the cinema? That's wrong. You should say, why do you prefer the theater to the cinema? And the second example, I prefer drawing to painting, not then. All right, that's everything I wanted to share with you about common mistakes we usually make using the word prefer. I hope you learned something. I hope you put that knowledge to good use in your conversation and your writing. Another day, another common mistake. This is your host, Danny. Thank you very much for listening to another Common Mistakes episode from English Plus Podcast. I will see you next time.